up, fifth grade? It's Mr. Allen, Social Studies. We are going into the next section. We should have already started the reading, and you did some of the questions already about the slavery in the colonies. So we've already talked about the establishment of the 13 colonies, but now let's talk about what made those colonies successful. And it's one word: slavery. All right, so you should have already read the slavery in the colonies, the triangular trade. You know, the triangular trade, meaning the trade from Great Britain to Africa, from Africa to America, then America back to Great Britain. That's a triangular trade, and you can see that in your study weekly 12. Triangular. All right. So what you're doing today is I'm going to go over a little bit about the slavery in the colonies. You're going to get 10 facts from this video, and we're going to post those facts in the assignment box in Edmodo. All right. So let's start off by talking about a little bit about slavery in the colonies. You do understand that slavery was actually made legal. There were laws that said that slavery was acceptable. It wasn't until 1619 that the first slaves were even brought over here. They were brought here from Africa, and they were sold in Jamestown, Virginia. All right, Jamestown was that first successful colony. It wasn't until 1642 that slavery actually became legal. 1642. And of course, what was the first state that passed this legislation? Massachusetts. Massachusetts was the first state to pass this legislation, but many other states after Massachusetts started adopting this legislation that slavery is legal. You have to understand that slaves were not considered people. They were considered property, like livestock. What's livestock? It's like if you have a farm and you have horses and pigs and chicken, you have donkeys, all of those things are considered livestock. Slaves were not considered people, but they were considered property. And there's actually a law, the laws that were put in place saying that slaves were property. And of course, you know, there were some slaves that were kind of fed up with it, with the whole thing, didn't want to be slaves, so what they would do is that they would flee, all right? And so in 1793, Congress created an act called the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793. Fugitive Slave Act of 1793 that says, it allowed the master to protect his property, that if a slave was to run away, that they were considered a fugitive. All right, they considered someone that broke the law and is running from the law. And so it gave the master the opportunity to go and get his property legally, that the slave just couldn't run away, and he could do whatever he wants with it. If he wanted to beat him, if he wanted to kill him, if he wanted to lynch him. Lynching means they take a whip and they beat you on the back. Whatever he wanted to do with you or to you, he could do it because you were his property.
This is searingly powerful.
Yeah. We wanted to literally make the connection to Africa because that's where the story of the Black experience in America begins. Just the experience of being captured, chained, imprisoned,
separated from your loved ones.
Separated from your loved ones, taken away. That's why we are so insistent on having a slavery sculpture at this site, because if you do not understand the way in which this narrative of racial difference, this ideology of white supremacy was created to justify this. If you're a normal, decent human being and you see people like this being treated in this way, how do you justify that? Well, you say that these people
are not really people.
They're not really people.
Yeah.
They're 3/5 human. And that idea, which was shaped for over 2.5 centuries, is critical to understanding then what happens after emancipation. These folks were promised freedom after emancipation, and what they got instead was terror, trauma, lynching. And then they were promised security, and what they got after that was segregation and apartheid and humiliation. And then we were promised equality, and we're still struggling to see that equality made manifest.
So in 1787, laws began to change. Things began to change. It was a slow process. It took some more years, a whole lot of years, before we got to the 13th Amendment that freed up the slaves. But the idea of some people totally rejecting slavery, and then those that totally agreed with slavery, it divided the country. All right, it divided the country. You had the northern states, which were known as the free states, and then you have the southern states, which are known as the slave states. And so you have two regions that totally disagree with each other, so much so that it started a war, and we'll get to that. So in 1860, though, in 1860 and 1861, southern states left the rest of the country, and they formed what was called the Confederate States. So the Confederate States of America, which was also called the Confederacy, was about 11 southern states that joined together and formed their own union. All right, so they operated separately from the rest of the country because they felt as though when Abraham Lincoln became president, that their way of life in slavery was being attacked or was in jeopardy. So those 11 states, or 12 states, 12 states, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, of course, South Carolina, and Texas. And then you had the upper South, which was Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. They even had their own flag, which was separate from the rest of the United States. So now the North and the South disagree about slavery. All right, the southern states have left the rest of the country, and they formed the Confederacy, and now everybody's at odds. And because of this disagreement, it started what's called a civil war, and we'll study that in a minute. Civil war, that means a civil war is when a country fights itself. It's a war within the same country. It's not like one country fighting another country. It's the same country fighting each other. So because of this disagreement, the Civil War started, and it lasted about 4 years, and it ended that the North won, of course, and it was in 1865 that laws were passed to make slavery illegal everywhere in the United States. What state was the last state? This should be your number 10. I want you to find out. What state was the last state to formally adopt that law that abolished slavery? Which state was the last state to adopt the law that slavery was illegal? All right, so you should have some 10 facts on this. I need you to post this in the assignment box that I will put up. I'll be Zooming tomorrow. I'll see y'all, we'll talk about it, and we'll be good, all right? Peace out. Like, go. Get out of here. No, like, for real, like, get off my TV. Get bye. Get out, leave now, bro. So, I have no idea what I'm about to say. I need some ice cream. All right. I hear no music. I'm going crazy. The camera's going dead. It's dying. It's dying. There we go. No, wait a minute. Seriously? This better not die on me. You better not die. So in 1787, 1787. So in 1887, so in I don't know what happened in 1887. I wasn't even born. I don't really care right now.
Few moments later.
So in 1870, oh God, it's so not 18 nothing. Where did I get 18 from?
The time has come for this cookie! Nom 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 nom.